And thank you all for being here today for our 2019 Media Impact Forum. On behalf of the Board of Directors of Media Impact Funders, many of whom are in the room today, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for being here. We at MIF, as I hope you know, have gone through a recent strategic planning process that was informed by feedback from many of you in the room today, so thank you for that, for giving us your input on what we should be doing. We now have a new strategic plan in place that I think is going to serve the needs of the field as it evolves even more directly. We're going to have a learning agenda. We're going to have different programming throughout the year in addition to this forum that we hope you participate in and that you make use of. We're really excited about the direction we're heading, and we really would hope that you check it out on MediaImpactFunders.org, which has recently been redesigned. So please check out the website for a lot more on our strategic direction and our plans for the year. As you hopefully already know, MIF is a member-supported organization, so thank you for those in the room who are already members, and those who aren't, please consider becoming members. We really would appreciate your support. We also are evaluating adding in future events like this registration fees for those who can afford to pay them, with a goal to trying to be inclusive for those who can't, but also recognizing that events like this take time, energy, and staff to put together, and we would like and appreciate your support for future events like that. So without further ado, I'm going to let us get into the programming today. Radio is an incredibly powerful and important medium. I live in San Francisco where people forget about terrestrial broadcasts and how much the rest of the country relies on it. And I still think it's a really important, innovative medium. And I'm really excited about the ways we're going to be exploring it today. So thank you all for being here, and I hope you enjoy the day. Thanks.
Thank you, David. And as you can see, we have a lot of segments that we're going to cover. Every one of these could probably be done in an hour and a half segments, but we've really created a program that's full of interesting activities, the different stations, different programs, and I like to think of it as a kind of an exquisite tasting menu of different ideas that we're going to share. And to get through it all as efficiently and delightfully as we can, we're relying on Laura Flanders, who's going to open up our conversations in the morning. Laura Flanders, as many of you know from her broadcast career, has her own Laura Flanders show, and you may know her from Grit TV in previous years as well. And just now, I learned that she's also recently received the Lifetime Achievement, the Pat Mitchell Lifetime Achievement Award from the Women's Media Center. So congratulations, Laura, for that exciting new award. And she's going to carry us through the morning program with these conversations, and you'll have an opportunity to offer brief questions in the open space that we have here in plenary, but also I want to bring your attention to the breakout sessions. What you hear of in the stage discussions, we also want you to go deeper in dialogue directly with the speakers in breakout sessions that will happen in the back of the room here and also behind the stage as well. We'll give you directions as to where those are going to happen, but understand that we know that you have experience, comments, questions that you want to share and not just be a spectator in this day. So bring those also into the breakout sessions as well. And without further ado, I want to bring Laura Flanders up to the stage, and she'll carry on for the next 3 segments. Thank you, Laura.
All right, well, I'll just start by saying it's an incredible pleasure to be here, and I grew up in a family that had a radio in every room, and I'm so radio addicted that when my partner took me to the Grand Canyon to go camping in the bottom of the canyon, I took a shortwave radio in a very, 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 very long aerial. All right, come on, Peter Buffett, up you come. Sarah Lomax-Reese, up you come. Peter the far end, Sarah the middle. I bring my lubrications here. And I just want to encourage you, I know you're all media folks, but you don't need media to hear this panel. You can come right on up to the front if you like. These seats are all available, and it's going to be a fun conversation, so thank you so much. We have with us Peter Buffett, who along with his wife Jennifer is the co-president of the Novo Foundation, and I should say at the start, in the interests of full disclosure, that my show would simply not exist if it wasn't for Novo, so I will be particularly hard on him. They're doing an extraordinary revitalization project in Kingston, New York, which is a 23,000 strong, beautiful, ancient city in upstate New York, about an hour and a half out of New York City. And their radio station, the radio station we're going to be talking about today, WKNY, Radio Free Kingston, is a big part of that revitalization project. So Peter will be talking about that. It's at 1490 AM, I think.
Yes, and 107.9 FM.
And 107.9 FM. Sarah Lomax-Reese is President and CEO of WURD, or as they like to say, Forward Radio, here in Philadelphia. It's the only African-American owned and operated station, and it too comes with a long legacy and a family legacy at that. Why don't we start with each of you telling me a little bit, or telling us a little bit about how your lives and radio intersect. Sarah, why don't you start?
Sure. I'm relatively new to radio. My background was print media. I co-founded an African-American health magazine back in 1992, and ran that for about 10 years. And right when when the magazine closed, my family purchased WURD in about 2003. And so I did a show on WURD for probably about 8 years. That was really a radio version of my magazine. So it focused on African-American health issues. And I was actively not involved in the management of the station. And eventually I was drawn in because the station was really struggling. It was struggling on many different levels, primarily financially. And so I stepped into it and have been running it since 2010. And I just find radio just absolutely amazing. Coming from publishing a bi-monthly magazine, the urgency, the immediacy, the intimacy of radio is just, it's just unparalleled.
And it's at 900 AM?
It's 900 AM and 96.1 FM. So, and we also have an app, and we stream on our website, and there's lots of different ways to access us. But it is, I just find it, and maybe it's because of my personality, I'm a very kind of last-minute person, so with radio, you can do stuff like right up to the minute, and you know, you don't have to have this long lead time. It's better if you do, like drive my staff crazy, because I'm always like, wait, we can do this tomorrow. And so I just love the theater of the mind aspect of radio, where you are creating these images just based on sound and storytelling. So I think I'll stop there.
All right, Peter, so no planning radio, is that what?
Yeah, right, exactly. First of all, your show would not exist without you. We just help it. I wanted to correct that. So, you know, I grew up in the 60s, and radio was what radio was back then, with the radio under the pillow or whatever, and, you know, drive around in the car waiting for the song to come on again. And then I've been a musician and composer most of my life. So commercials, film, television, that sort of thing. And that was in the 80s, 90s, and beyond. And radio, frankly, became, I think, a little more disappointing as I learned what the underpinnings of it came to be, which is advertising revenue and market share and all these things that I think compromised to some extent the excitement of what it was in the 50s and 60s and into the 70s. And so it played less of a role until the foundation came along, and I saw it as sort of a community building social justice device. And that's where both Radio Milwaukee and Radio Kingston came into being, is thinking about how can a radio station knit community back together. So it really, you know, took the arc over my lifetime in that sort of way. That's where we've ended up.
Beautiful. Well, I wanted to give people a sense of what they would hear if they tuned into either of these stations. I went to sleep listening to URD, and there was a fascinating conversation with a guy talking about being in solitary confinement. And how in solitary he could get books and education and learn how to contest his sentencing better than he could in general population. Fascinating. I woke up listening to WRD's news about the current state of the land trusts in Kingston, but I'm not sure that anything would convey the stations as well as a little bit of video, ironically. So let's play a little video. Let's start with a little clip of a very short feature we did on Radio Free Kingston on the Laura Flanders Show. Roll the tape.
So there's the concept of the commons. This radio station and its frequency belong to the people of Kingston. And so bringing it back to the people of Kingston, giving the people of Kingston who didn't have a chance to have access maybe to being on the air here before, is why we're doing what we're doing. And the end result is hopefully a city that falls in love with itself. My name's Jimmy Buff. I'm the executive director of Radio Kingston. I also host the afternoon program. It's called Jimmy Buff Loves You. So I have a great little jingle that says, Jimmy Buff loves you. And it's a reminder to myself to act that way.
That's yes at Radio Kingston and Starship Trooper. We are all made of stars.
So we took over on November 1st, 2017. And by January 1st, 2018, we had gone from a commercial radio station to a non-commercial radio station. We had jettisoned 2/3 of the syndicated programming, which is programming that doesn't come from here, doesn't employ local people, and has no real value to the community, and started replacing it with local programming. And since then, we've added, my guess is about 30 different radio shows representing many, many different voices of the community.
You're listening to La Voz. Estás escuchando La Voz.
Sí, esto es La Voz en Radio Kingston. Soy Mariel Fiori. Estamos hasta las 12 del mediodía, de lunes a viernes de 10 a 12. Nos pueden escuchar. Y hoy es día de política, así que la tenemos a Ashley Ditus y también a Gladys Figueroa. Y estamos hablando de que este jueves son las elecciones primarias.
One of the important things here at the station is that we do not have to look for ratings. And so we can invite anybody we think has something to offer to our community. And people from all walks of life. We can have here somebody who works as a dishwasher, and we can also have somebody who teaches at Bard College or New Paltz, SUNY New Paltz, or any university. It's something that Mariel and I share because we think that everybody has a story to tell.
Okay. And let's play a little bit of video giving a sense of WURD. Play that tape.
That's my dad.
Hi, Dad.
That's my dad.
Beautiful. Thank you. So why radio? We get a sense of what you do. Why radio as the tool of civic revitalization? You want to start with you, Peter?
Sure. So, as I mentioned before, it certainly felt like a way to knit community together in a unique way, or an old way, not so unique actually, but just kind of forgotten potentially as that tool. And also, the station is really, I really do say it's a social justice organization disguised as a radio station because We aren't just a radio station in the sense that we are out in the community supporting block parties, live streaming from City Hall, going to just about every event. Our remote team is extraordinary. And you can do remotes in a way you never could before in terms of the equipment and all that. So we're very lucky in that regard. But it really saw, in, again, a small community specifically, we could cover essentially the whole thing and become the station, which we have in a very short time.
You have the mayor on the air on a regular basis. You cover City Hall live, is that right, Sarah?
Yeah, every Thursday today. Yeah, every Thursday we're live broadcasting City Council, and we have the mayor on, we have the DA, the governor, we are kind of that bridge between the stakeholders of Philadelphia and Pennsylvania and the community, and there's a lot of interactivity and engagement. And I think it's funny what Peter says is they're a social justice organization masquerading as a radio station. We are similar, but we're also a for-profit. We're really a nonprofit masquerading as a for-profit. I mean, we are a commercial radio station, which is a major difference, but our social mission is so clear and so powerful and so predominant that it's a really interesting dance that I do all the time, walking that line, because we do need ratings, we do need advertising, we do need all of these sources of revenue to be sustained, and so. Yeah, I mean, to be clear, a lot of people looking at this would assume, oh, that's an NPR station or a community station or a public-supported station. You are public-supported, but you're not commercial, either one of you. I mean, you're not NPR, either one of you. No.
No.
What's your structure, Peter?
Well, mine's a little different, and that's the fortune of having a fortune. In terms of a foundation, let me correct that. I have a couple of phrases I like to use about the foundation. One is that we are putting money out of its misery, because if it's trapped, and you got to get it to move. But the other one is that we're practicing 21st century alchemy. We're turning money into love, and that's no joke. I mean, you heard what Jimmy said, and so my grand experiment, ours really, at the foundation, is to say, what if we lead with trust and love and community and figure out how to make it work later and just see what happens, because we believe we're going to build something that's so valuable for the community. They will get on, they already are on board, but then we can start to say, okay, what's the best way to sustain this? But to lead with dollars, which we all have to do in every aspect of our lives, constricts us from what might happen if we could actually live into the possibility and the imagination of a station or anything else in life.
And what is your sense of a business model? Because I know you do have one.
Could you show it to me?
Well, they told what I heard
Just
from
kidding.
the people that were on the air was that they have a vision of ultimately having advertising revenue and putting
Right.
it back into the community in a certain way.
Well, yeah, exactly. So that's one of the...
And membership too, I think.
We will get to that, but that really isn't even in our thought process right now. And it's allowed Jimmy, for instance, with advertising revenue, to go to a place that I don't think anybody would have thought of otherwise. And that is that, we've had advertisers on the station since 1961, I guess, some of the restaurants and things in Kingston. It's a legacy station. It started in 1939. The Polka Show has been on for 71 years with 2 hosts. How about that? So in terms of advertising revenue, we decided, Jimmy really created this mechanism where we will take the revenue, but it will go straight into a community fund that will be for emergency funding for people who got a flat tire, whatever it might be. So we're literally transforming the advertising revenue right back into the community, because he doesn't have to worry about making numbers when we do, which will be, I think it'll be. It's a small town. It's a little.
Whoa. That's like nirvana, what he just described. It is not my life at all.
Yeah.
Now, you have a
At
commercial
all.
model, but you also have membership. I heard them pitching.
Oh,
for
yeah,
members.
we absolutely have. This is our membership program, the 4-word movement, which I thought was very catchy. But anyway,
doing our
yeah,
best.
this is not. This is a slog. This is we the station. We were able to acquire WURD because my father had a major wealth building event that allowed him to invest in a number of different businesses, but he was essentially funding it out of his pocket for years and years and years, to the point where by the time I got there, it was like, I'm not doing this anymore. This thing is about to shut down. And it was, I'm not like, Superwoman, but I was like, give me a shot, give me a chance to like see if there's a way to turn this around, because I really believe in the power of media, of radio, of all. And Philadelphia has this long legacy of black talk radio. And that's what we are. We are a talk station, which is really unique. And Philly is 44% African American. It's a very, dynamic city. And so, I approached it from a totally multimedia approach. That it's not this low-powered, small AM station, and that was kind of the mentality of the staff of just the organization, that, we're just kind of creep along. And so I tried to bring events and digital and all these other multimedia things to it, but it is like, my dad transitioned. He passed away in 2013, and he was really the backstop for the station up to that point. After 2013, it was like, figure it out. There is no line of credit. There is no, Dad, can you write a check? No, it was all, and it's been a incredible, difficult struggle, because we should not even be in existence. There are probably 3, that's what the Lenfest Institute, they did a report. There's like 3, including us, black talk radio stations in the country. So our existence is like an anomaly, a total anomaly. And I have a theory of why we are still here. One is because we have no debt. My dad was able to purchase the station, outright. If we had debt, we'd be dead. We would have been gone if we had debt service. The other thing is my family. I'm one of 6, and everyone in my family plays a critical role. My sister is our general counsel and HR. My brother is our CFO. My other brother is a developer. My other brother is the CEO. And so we have this family team that I don't have to write checks for legal services and all this. If we had to do that, we'd be dead. So there's these unique things, and Philly is home. We got so many relationships. My dad created such a legacy in terms of trust and goodwill that we're the beneficiaries of. People say, why don't you take this model and do it in New York or do it someplace? Well, I would love to, but there are these unique kind of ingredients that are specific to this place that allows it to grow and succeed. And we're actually growing and succeeding after many years of not so much.
Come on.
But it's still a struggle.
So let's talk about context. You've alluded to it, but Peter, 2 questions for you related. Talk a little bit about the context in terms of time, the moment that we're in for Kingston, and why this initiative is important now. And then I'm interested in, how do you assess its impact? Kingston is a rapidly gentrifying city with a currently fairly diverse population, large legacy black population on the Underground Railroad, powerful colonial history, and it's within the I can't afford Manhattan anymore commuter belt for mostly affluent white people.
Right.
So it's at an important moment, and the radio station's playing an important role.
Yeah, so who doesn't agree that it's an important moment?
I was trying to get specific.
We are, but because it is in Kingston, but obviously it is in the country, and so I will go slightly on the rant of, for all the funding streams in the room, this is the moment. This is the time. We're the best risk capital out there. We should be doing things nobody else will do, and that's what we're trying to do at Novo. And I think everybody has to. It is all hands on deck. So I just want to speak to the word sustainable for a minute, because I think it's very dangerous. I think that you can have an eye towards it, you can orient towards it, but if that's a condition that needs to be met at the outset, somebody needs to answer to you on how it's going to be sustainable. I urge you to look at American history and the government's involvement in the railroads and agriculture and education. Nothing was sustainable. Most of it still isn't. So when someone says, how are you going to make that sustainable? That's a trap. I think that's a real trap, and we have to examine that carefully. So that's my rant on the word. And the context really was that we're in a time. And regardless of how you feel about the current political climate, there's no question that Trump's the best organizer we've ever had. I mean, it has pulled people together and galvanized them and inspired them to do things. And I saw that in Kingston, small town, 23,000 people. But it's a revolutionary town. The British burned it in 1776. George Washington had to run down the road to get away from them. So it has that feeling in it. At the courthouse in Kingston, which was mentioned, the Empire State the Constitution was ratified, and Sojourner Truth won her case. You've got these amazing dynamics that live in that city, and you've got people that still carry that. And so really, I feel extremely fortunate that that's where I found myself and had the ability with lots of different interventions there. Novo's doing a ton of ecosystemic work because the issue isn't going to be one thing, but the radio station will give them all a voice. And so it just seemed like an obvious thing to create the conditions for all these other things to happen, really.
And a similar question for you, Sarah. I mean, every issue we look at, whether it's education, justice, incarceration, whatever it is, we know that justice doesn't actually trickle down, and bad policy does tend to kind of start at the bottom. With respect to your assessment of your role in this city at this moment and its impact, how do you go about thinking about it?
Well, we just had a big local election on Tuesday where we voted for mayor and city council and sheriff and a bunch of. So I see our role as absolutely pivotal, not just in connecting our community, the African American community, which, you know, Philly is the poorest big city. There's a lot of poverty. I think it's like 26% poverty. It's a very segregated city. I love this city. I talk about it, you know, in not the most glowing terms, but this is an amazing city, and despite all of those things. But we are that bridge, but we're also holding these folks accountable, which is absolutely, I mean, we see that with the national press. We see that just with media, and that's why local media is so critical, is these elected officials have to be held accountable, because if they're not held accountable, they're going to do whatever the hell they want. So I see that as a major role for us on the local level. 2020 is going, Pennsylvania is like the epicenter of, you know, I think it's one of those key battleground states. So, and Philadelphia really drives Pennsylvania. And so, yeah, you know, our ability to communicate what is happening and what it means for our community specifically.
You've had some specific stories that you surfaced and that made a difference.
Absolutely. I mean, it's ongoing. I mean, I think that, you know, there are things like parking ticket amnesty. You know, people, they uncovered that they were disproportionately ticketing people in Black communities. They were getting a disproportionate number of tickets, and so we we shed light on that along with other media, and you know, they did a parking amnesty thing. Another thing, a young
Which, just to back up, means a lot of people were kept out of jail.
Kept out of jail and didn't have to didn't have to write checks too. But there was another story that it's still kind of unresolved. But there was a young Black man who tragically killed a white developer here in Philly. He was the Black kid was a bike delivery guy delivering food, and they got into an altercation, and he ended up stabbing this man, and he died. And the media, the mainstream, I hate mainstream, but mainstream media, covered it in a very kind of stereotypical way. They immediately kind of pegged this young man as kind of, you know, like a bad rapper kid who, and it turned out he was in college. He was this really good, and the advocacy that we did on the station really shed a spotlight on the fact that this kid was a full human being, and it was a tragic experience, but don't assume that he was this stereotype and he was this monster. And the other guy actually had a record, and there were other things, there were mitigating circumstances on both sides. And so our listenership showed up and showed out at this kid's hearing. And he ended up, being able to go home on bail, and he's home while they're still working out this trial. It is an absolute tragedy, but this kid's life would have gone, I think, a completely different direction had there not been conversation, advocacy, and community, uproar around how he was being portrayed and treated. And so I think that showing the full humanity of our community is a big part of what we do.
So we have the micro, the macro, and we have 5 minutes. 2 questions. We're going to take 2 questions, and then don't forget there's going to be a breakout session that Vince mentioned not right after this, but at 11 o'clock from 11 to 12 with Jenny Choi. So you don't have to ask all your questions now, but 2 good questions. Quick. 1, 2. There. 1 more. Here. 1, 2. Start with you.
I just would like Sarah to talk about the eco
Oh,
and the community activities.
thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
that one, and
so-
let's get this one so we know what it is, the question.
So his question was about do you want to do
I would
the
like to
second
hear
question
both
first?
of them,
Okay.
and then we'll come back to them. Let's hear
Okay.
this question as well. So the eco...
So my question is about how you cover people with disabilities, whether it's physical or cognitive or mental health or other. Do you have a special lens? And there are very few reporters with disabilities that are covering those issues about their own community, whether you look at authentic representation and reporting for that community.
Beautiful. All right, so the eco
Eco-word. So thank you for that question. Last September, we launched an environmental justice initiative called Eco-word, and it is looking at the intersection of race, income, and the environment here in Philadelphia. We know that African-American communities are often dumping grounds in many different ways, and there are disproportionate rates of asthma and all kinds of diseases that are environmentally driven. And so we've been producing written content, radio content, events, and things like that all around that initiative. It was a part of the civil. It is a part of the civil platform and project. Some of you may know what civil is. It was the cryptocurrency and blockchain experiment in journalism, and it's been a wonderful experience for us to be able to cover this really critical issue that has not gained a lot of traction in the Black community, and trying to figure out ways to communicate so that we too understand how directly impacted and how we need to be a part of the advocacy. And there are a lot of people who have already been engaged on that front in the Black community before that.
Peter, you want to talk about disability justice and disability in your production? I interviewed one of the people on your air who said she had a learning disability.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because I can speak directly to programming I'm familiar with on the ecological front, and yet the disability front, I don't have the full knowledge because Jimmy is the program director. We have 31 programs. We do a lot of remote broadcasting. I have no doubt that we are reaching into the community, but I'm not sure whether it's through programming specific, because we have a show for literally almost everything, or whether it's going into the community itself, because I know there were issues around wheelchair access on some sidewalks in Kingston, and that became a big piece of news. So we go both where the news is needed to spread, but we also, again, have a show for almost everything, and I'm disappointed in myself for not knowing all 31. I know a few of them, but I'm proud of all of them, and proud of Jimmy for really looking through the lens of inclusion across the board. So I will probably get back to you with deeper information.
All right, I think we are there, 9:50 on the dot.
We're
Thank
good.
you both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Peter Buffett,
Thank
Sarah
you.
Lomax Rees.